interesting thing that you've both spoken to me about separately before this conversation, and we were just talking about, was how do we measure and how do we know?
Right.
And I know you feel very strongly about this as well.
Yeah. So I agree. So I think the word testing gets thrown around a lot, and sometimes it has this negative connotation. I like the word assessment. Right? Testing is, you sit down and you test something. The problem with testing, the way we identify it, is that most of the time it doesn't work, right? In other words, I saw a stat back in February that 7% of Americans can name you the first 4 presidents of the United States, right? Now I can ask one of you, these are some of the smartest people in the world, I can ask one of you to name me who the first 4 presidents are. And if you don't know, the rest of your day is ruined. You'll be the idiot who didn't know who the first 4 presidents are, and everyone will make fun of you, even though they didn't know who the first 4 presidents are, but nobody called on them, right? Or I can give you 30 seconds, and all of you can tell me who the first 4 presidents are. And so all of a sudden, that idea of testing to see if you know who the first 4 presidents are, compared to a deeper level of assessment, which is who are the first 4 presidents, but what were their relationship to each other? How did they work together? What would have happened to this country if the 4th president was the first president, right? I mean, these are the types of questions. So in the world that we currently live in, information becomes a commodity, it has no value. It's what we do with that information and how we convert it into intelligence. Intelligence is central to a knowledge economy, and that's the economy that we're facing. So how do we assess that? That's what I'm interested in, is how do we assess intelligence? How do we do performance-based assessments? Maker models, those types of things where we can actually see people producing things.
I think you're drawing a distinction between perhaps old conventional testing, where we're measuring a particular level of what's been memorized.
Right, and we need some of that, and we can do randomized testing and all that, but if all we're doing is getting kids to try to remember things so that one day they can take a test and then they'll forget everything, a couple years later, it doesn't make any sense to me.
But again, there are some pretty darn good tests which assess what kids know and how they can think and how they can solve problems.
Yep.
I mean, that's what all the PISA tests are all about. And these are the internationally normed tests that you can compare your kids to kids from Finland or Korea or Shanghai. And at our charter schools, basically, that's exactly what we do. Every school is required to take those assessments. And you judge your success not on how do your kids do compared to the next community or the next school district, but it's how do they compare to the Shanghai kids who are on average perform the best in the world today, or the Finnish kids, or the Singapore kids, or the Korean kids. And how you do that assessment is important. But being quantitative and measuring how well you're doing and not fooling yourself into feeling good, I think, is also important.
Sure.
And we've spent 50 years with social promotions. We've 50 years of kind of taking the whole group along without really imparting any knowledge or wisdom or problem-solving capability into them. Not all. We have some great teachers, great school districts, great shining examples. On average, we're failing. So we know how to do it in isolated pockets, but we've not been successful at all of spreading this around and getting all of the 15,000 school districts in the U.S. to be successful.
I think the key word you said before I came and joined you is this idea of making sure that we're focused on the problem-solving skills, the critical thinking skills. Those seem to have come, back in the 50s when you were talking about this. It was okay that people were reading at a 3rd grade reading level, 4th grade reading level, because you can survive that way. That's why newspapers were written at that level, right? It's this idea that we now live in a knowledge-based economy that we need to focus on a different set of skills.